But do you recall the most famous reindeer of all?
Charles.
Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer had a very shiny nose, and if you ever saw it, you would even say it.
Hello, my beautiful bugs. Welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, welcome. My name is Brooke. I am a fashion lover, a makeup lover, and a proud mother to a sophisticated cat named Snoop. For today's video, I wanted to do something extremely different. I wanted to share with you some horror Christmas stories. Some of you guys are weird like me and are excited to hear these stories. Then the rest of you are like, will she ever let go of Halloween? It's literally December, and the answer to that is a hard no.
No! No!
Believe it or not, gathering around a fire to tell spooky ghost stories was a popular Victorian Christmas tradition. Oh, and disclaimer, I will not be doing a step-by-step tutorial because we are hearing stories. Duh. So with all that being said, let's get started. I'm so excited. 'Twas the night before Christmas. No, but seriously. This story is called Smee by A.M. Burrage. No, said Jackson with a deprecatory smile. I'm sorry, I don't want to upset your game. I shan't be doing that because you'll have plenty without me. But I'm not playing any games of hide and seek. It was Christmas Eve. We were a party of 14 with just the proper leavening of youth. We had dined well. It was a season for childish games. We were all in this mood for playing them. All that is, except Jackson. When somebody suggested hide and seek, there was a rapturous, almost unanimous approval. His was the one stubborn voice. It was not like Jackson to spoil sport or refuse to do as others wanted. Somebody had asked him if he were feeling seedy. No, he answered. I feel perfectly fit, thanks. But, he added with a smile, which softened without retracting the flat refusal, I'm not playing hide and seek. Why not? Someone asked. He hesitated for a moment before replying. I sometimes go and stay at a house where a girl was killed. She was playing hide and seek in the dark. She didn't know the house very well. There was a door that led to the servants' staircase, and when she was chased, she thought the door led to a bedroom. She opened the door, jumped, landed at the bottom of the staircase, and she broke her neck. We all looked serious. Miss Fernley said, How terrible! And were you there when it happened? Jackson shook his head sadly and said, No. But I was there when something else happened, something far worse. What could be worse than that? This was, said Jackson. He hesitated for a moment and then he said, I wonder if any of you have ever played the game called Smee. It's much better than hide and seek. The name comes from It's Me, of course. Perhaps you'd like to play instead of hide and seek. Let me tell you the rules of the game. Every player is given one sheet of paper. All the sheets except for one are blank. On the last sheet of paper is written Smee. Nobody knows who Smee is except Smee himself or herself. You turn out the lights and Smee goes out quietly out of the room and hides. After a time, the others go off to search for Smee. But of course, they don't know who they are looking for. When one player meets another one, he challenges him by saying, Smee? The other player answers, Smee. They continue searching. But the real Smee doesn't answer when someone challenges. The second player stays quietly beside him. Presently, they will be discovered by a third player. He will challenge and receive no answer, and he will join the first two. This goes on until all the players are in the same place. The last one to find Smee has to pay a forfeit. It's a good, noisy, amusing game in a big house. It often takes a long time for everyone to find Smee. Perhaps you'd like to try. I'll happily pay my forfeit and sit here by the fire while you play." "It sounds a good game," I remarked. "Have you played it too, Jackson?" "Yes," he answered. "I played it in the house that I was telling you about." "And she was there? The girl who broke her—" No, no, said someone else. "He told us he wasn't there when she broke her neck." Jackson thought for a moment. "I don't know if she was there or not. I'm afraid she was. I know that there was 13 of us playing in the game, and there were only 12 people in the house, and I didn't know the dead girl's name. When I heard that whispered name in the dark, it didn't worry me, but I tell you, I'm never going to play that kind of game again. It made me quite nervous for a long time. I prefer to pay my forfeit at once." We all stared at him. His words did not make sense at all. Tim Vasu was the kindest man in the world. He smiled at us all. "This sounds like an interesting story," he said. "Come on, Jackson, you can tell it to us instead of playing a forfeit." "Very well," said Jackson. "Here is his story. Have you met the Sangstons? They're cousins of mine. They live in the Surrey. 5 years ago, they invited me to go spend Christmas with them. It was an old house with lots of unnecessary passages and staircases. A stranger could easily get lost in them. Well, I went down for that Christmas. Violet Stangston promised me that I knew most of the other guests. Unfortunately, I couldn't get away from my job until Christmas Eve. All the other guests had arrived the previous day. I was the last to arrive. I was the only one just in time for dinner. I said hello to everyone I knew, and Violet Stangston introduced me to the people I didn't know. Then it was time to go to dinner. That is perhaps why I didn't hear the name of the tall, dark-haired, handsome girl who I hadn't met before. Everyone was in rather a hurry, and I'm always bad at catching people's names. She looked cold and clever. She didn't look at all friendly. She looked interesting, and I wondered who she was. I didn't ask because I was sure that someone would speak to her by name during the meal. Unluckily, however, I was a long way from her at the table. I was sitting next to Mrs. Gorman, and as usual, Mrs. Gorman was being very bright and amusing. Mrs. Gorman's conversations are always worth listening to, and I completely forgot to ask the name of the dark, proud girl. There were 12 of us, including the Sangstons themselves. We were all young, or trying to be young. Jack and Violet Sangston were the oldest. Their 17-year-old son, Reggie, was the youngest. It was Reggie who suggested Smee. He told us the rules of the game just as I've described them to you. Jack Sangston warned us all, if you're going to play games in the dark, he said, please be careful of the back stairs on the first floor. A door leads to them, and I've often thought about taking the door off. In the dark, a stranger to the house could think that they're walking into a room. A girl really did break her neck on those stairs. I asked how it happened. It was about 10 years ago, before we came here. There was a party, and they were playing hide and seek. This girl was looking for somewhere to hide. She heard somebody coming, ran along the passageway to get away. She opened the door, thinking it led to a bedroom. She planned to hide in there until the seeker had gone. Unfortunately, the door had led to the back stairs. She fell straight down to the bottom of the stairs, and she was dead when they picked her up. We all promised to be careful. Mrs. Gorman even made a little joke about living to be 90. You see, none of us had known the poor girl. We didn't want to feel sad on Christmas Eve. Well, we started the game immediately after dinner. Young Reggie Sangston went around making sure all the lights were off, except the ones in the servants' room and in the sitting room where we were. We then prepared 12 sheets of paper. 11 of them were blank, and one of them had Smee written on it. Reggie mixed all of them up, and then we reached out and took one. The person who got the paper with Smee on it had to hide. I looked at mine and saw that it was blank. A moment later, all the electric lights went out. In the darkness, I heard someone moving very quietly to the door. After a minute, somebody blew a whistle. We all rushed to the door. I had no idea who's Smee. For 5 or 10 minutes, we were all rushing up and down the passages and in and out of rooms, challenging each other and answering, Smee? Smee! After a while, the noise died down, and I guess someone had found Smee. After a time, I found a group of people sitting down on some narrow stairs. I challenged and received no answer. So Smee was there. I hurriedly joined the group. Presently, 2 more players arrived. Each one was hurrying to avoid being last. Jack Sangston was last, and now he was given a forfeit. "I think we're all here now, aren't we?" he remarked. He lit a match, looked up the staircase, and began to count. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, he said, then laughed. "That's silly. There's one too many." The match went out. He lit another one and began to count. He got as far as to 12, and he looked puzzled. "There are 13 people here," he said. "I have counted them myself." "Oh, nonsense," I laughed. "You probably began with yourself. Now you don't want to count yourself twice." His son took out his electric torch. It gave a better light than the matches. We all began to count. Of course, there were 12 of us. Jack laughed. "Well," he said, "I was sure I counted 13 twice." From halfway up the stairs, Violet Sangston spoke nervously. "I thought there was somebody sitting 2 steps above me. Have you moved, Captain Ransom?" The captain said that he hadn't. "But I thought there was somebody sitting between Mrs. Sangston and me." Just for a moment, there was an uncomfortable something in the air. A cold finger seemed to touch us all. For that moment, we all felt something odd and unpleasant had just happened, and was likely to happen again. Then we laughed at ourselves, and at each other. We felt normal again. There were only 12 of us, and that was that. Still laughing, we marched back to the sitting room to begin again. This time, I was Smee. Violet Sangston found me while I was searching for a hiding place. That game didn't last long. Soon there were 12 people and the game was over. Violet felt cold and wanted her jacket. Her husband went up to the bedroom to fetch it. As soon as he'd gone, Reggie touched me on the arm. He was looking pale and sick. "Quick," he whispered. "I've got to talk to you. Something horrible has happened." We went into the breakfast room. "What's the matter?" I asked. "I don't know. You were Smee last time, weren't you?" "Well, of course, I didn't know who Smee was. While Mother and the others ran to the west side of the house and found you, I went east. There's a deep clothes cupboard in my bedroom. It looked like a good hiding place. I thought that perhaps Smee might be there. I opened the door in the dark and touched somebody's hand." "Smee?" I whispered. There was no answer. I thought I found Smee. "Well, I don't understand it, but I suddenly had a strange cold feeling. I can't describe it. But I felt that something was wrong, so I turned on my electric torch and nobody was there. Now I am sure I touched a hand, and nobody could get out of the cupboard because I was standing in the doorway. What do you think?" "You imagine that you touched a hand?" I said. He gave a short laugh. "I knew you'd say that. Of course, I imagined it. That's the only explanation, isn't it?" I agreed with him. I could see that he is still shaken. Together we returned to the sitting room for another game of Smee. The others were all ready and waiting to start again. Perhaps it was my imagination, although I'm sure that it was not. But I had a feeling that nobody was really enjoying the game anymore. But everyone was too polite to mention it. All the same, I had the feeling that something was wrong. All the fun had gone out of the game. Something deep inside me was trying to warn me. "Take care," it whispered. "Take care." There was something unnatural, unhealthy, influence at work in this house. Why did I have this feeling? Because Jack Sangston had counted 13 people instead of 12? Because his son imagined he had touched someone's hand in an empty cupboard? I tried to laugh at myself, but I did not succeed. Well, we started again. While we were all chasing the unknown Smee, we were all as noisy as ever. But it seemed to me that most of us were just acting. We were no longer enjoying the game. At first I stayed with others, but for several minutes, no Smee was found. I left the main group and started searching on the first floor, at the west side of the house. And there, while I was feeling my way along, I bumped into a pair of human knees. I put out my hand and touched a soft curtain. Then I knew where I was. There were tall, deep windows with window seats at the end of the passage. The curtains reached the ground. Somebody was sitting in the corner of one, behind a curtain. Aha! I thought. I've caught a Smee! So I pulled the curtain to one side and touched a woman's arm. It was a dark, moonless night outside. I couldn't see the woman sitting in the corner in the window seat. Smee? I whispered. There was no answer. When Smee is challenged, he or she does not answer. So I sat down beside her to wait for the others. Then I whispered, "What's your name?" And out of the darkness beside me, the whisper came, "Brenda Ford." I didn't know of that name, but I guess that was the only one I didn't know. I knew every girl in the house by name except for one, and that was the tall, pale, dark girl. So here she was, sitting beside me on the window seat, shut in between a heavy curtain and a window. I was beginning to enjoy the game. I wondered if she was enjoying it too. I whispered one or two rather ordinary questions to her and received no answer. Smee is a game of silence. It is a rule of the game that the Smee and the person that found the Smee has to keep quiet. This, of course, makes it harder for the others to find them, but there was nobody else about. I wondered, therefore, why she was insisting on silence. I spoke again and got no answer. I began to feel annoyed. Perhaps she is one of those cold, clever girls who had a poor opinion of all men, I thought. She doesn't like me, and she is using the rules of the game as an excuse for not speaking. Well, if she doesn't like sitting here with me, I certainly do not want to sit with her. I turned away from her. I hope someone finds us soon, I thought. I sat there and realized that I disliked sitting beside this girl very much indeed. That was strange. The girl I had seen at dinner had seemed likable in a cold way. I noticed her and I wanted to know more about her, but now I felt really uncomfortable beside her. The feeling of something wrong, something unnatural was growing. I remember touching her arm and I trembled with horror. I wanted to jump up and run away. I prayed that someone else would come along soon. Just then, I heard light footsteps in the passage. Somebody on the other side of the curtain brushed against my knees. The curtain moved to one side, and a woman had touched my shoulder. "Smee?" whispered a voice that I recognized at once. It was Mrs. Gorman. Of course she received no answer. She came and sat down beside me. I felt so much better. "It's Tony Jackson, isn't it?" she whispered. "Yes," I whispered back. "You're not Smee, are you?" "No, she's on my other side." She reached out across me. I heard her fingernails scratch a woman's silk dress. "Hello, Smee. How are you?" "Who are you?" "Oh, it's against the rules to talk. Never mind." "Tony, we'll break the rules. Do you know Tony?" This game is beginning to annoy me a little. I hope they aren't going to play this all evening. I like to play a nice quiet game, all together beside a warm fire. Me too, I agreed. Can you suggest something to them? There's something rather unhealthy about this particular game. I'm sure I'm being very silly, but I can't get rid of the idea that we have an extra player. Somebody who ought not to be here at all. That was exactly how I felt, but I didn't say so. However, I felt very much better. Mrs. Gorman's arrival had chased away my fears. We sat talking. "I wonder when the others will find us," said Mrs. Gorman. After a time, we heard the sound of feet and young Reggie's voice shouting, "Hello, hello, is anybody in there?" "Yes," I answered. "Is Mrs. Gorman with you?" "Yes." "What happened to you? You've both got forfeits. We've all been waiting for you for hours." "But you haven't found Smee yet," I complained. You mean, I was Smee this time." "But Smee is here with us," I cried. "Yeah," agreed Mrs. Gorman. The curtain was pulled back and we sat looking in the eye of Reggie's electric torch. I looked at Mrs. Gorman, and then on the other side between me and the wall was an empty place on the window seat. I stood up at once and then sat down again. I was feeling very sick and the world seemed to be going around and around. There was somebody there, I insisted. "I touched her." "So did I," said Mrs. Gorman in a trembling voice. "And I don't think anyone could leave this window seat without us knowing." Reggie gave a shaky little laugh. I remember this unpleasant experience earlier this evening. Someone's been playing jokes, he said. Are you coming down? We came back down to the sitting room. Jack Sangston stared at me and said, Miss who? He breathed. Brenda Ford, she said. Jack put a hand on my shoulder. Look here, Tony, he said. I don't mind a joke, but enough is enough. We don't want to worry the ladies. Brenda Ford is the name of the girl who broke her neck on the stairs. She was playing hide and seek here 10 years ago. The end. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this week's video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And while you're down there, don't forget that little bell icon right next to the subscribe button. Go ahead and press that so you can get notified every time I post a new video. And I'll see you guys next time.